Down the track.
What's that coming down the track? It's a mean machine in the red and black.
Go, dog.
I don't know the rest. All I know is that Pat McAfee trolled them dogs,
No.
which is who we're previewing on our second to last preview episode for the SEC. We are running right up against the wall here, but we're pushing forward. And you may be wondering, I thought, guys, do you seriously have Alabama as your number one team? No, we don't. We have Georgia as our number one team, but we got a special surprise that we're gonna make. We're gonna make an announcement on the next episode of Heads Up Play podcast. So you got to watch that. Obviously, Alabama preview coming after that one, but you'll find out why.
Yes. Big news.
Big news.
Let's discuss the Georgia Bulldogs 2024 season coming ahead. Man, let's talk about a little bit last year. I think Georgia got screwed last year, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yes, they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship. But are you really going to tell me that Georgia is not one of the four best teams in the college football playoffs last year?
Georgia, 100%. Even after losing to Alabama, they still were the best team in the country.
I truly think they will play with a chip on their shoulder. Last year, you're going to tell me. I still don't. I think if Georgia was in the playoffs, Michigan wouldn't have beat them. Washington wouldn't have beat them. Texas wouldn't have beat them. I don't think we would have beat them again.
Oh, certainly. They absolutely would have won the national championship. They would have three-peated. It's just with the situation with the 4-team playoff, you can't lose the SEC championship. You cannot lose that game. You know, it's just kind of screwed up, but that system, you know, if you lose a game earlier in the season, you have time to make up for it. Look at what Alabama did. Look at what Texas did. Those are both one-loss teams. They slowly worked their ways back up the ladder in the rankings. And by the time Georgia had lost the SEC championship, you can't sit there and say you could not have left Alabama out, certainly, which means you definitely couldn't have left Texas out because Texas beat Georgia. And then it came down to, okay, Florida State, who was out there without their quarterback, and they were just a dirt poor team, or Georgia, who just lost the SEC championship. So I thought the committee got it right at the time, but of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that the four best teams were in it. I think the four best teams there were Michigan, Texas, Georgia, and Alabama or Washington.
And Oregon. I mean, we always think.
And Oregon.
I still think if Oregon played Washington again, Oregon would be. But you know what? That's not a problem no more. We have the 12 team. Georgia, well, from here on, while I'll make this bold prediction. While Kirby is the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't care how long he's on, they will make the playoff every year.
You know, I got to thinking about this morning on a drive for work. I don't think many people have talked about this, but because it's going to be harder in the playoffs, because you have to win more games, right? I mean, you'll have to win, at least 4 or 5, depending on where you're seated. Since it will be harder to technically win the national championship, does Kirby have to still win as many as Nick Saban to be considered the greatest of all time? Because you could make the argument that Nick Saban did it in maybe an easier era.
He could. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Is two national championships and the 4-team playoff, and then let's say 3 more national championships in the 12-team playoff, is that equal to 7 national championships that, say, a Nick Saban has? I don't know, but that's way, way, way down the line. Who knows if Kirby will even be around then? And I want to ask you this. We'll get into the roster and stuff a little bit, but, you know, Do you think that Kirby could one day leave Georgia for another job? I don't think he'd ever leave for another college job, but do you think maybe he's got an inkling for the NFL one day?
I'm gonna lie, I really thought he was gonna come here.
I thought so too.
I really thought he was gonna come here this year. You kind of heard rumors a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I do think if he ever does leave Georgia, he'll go to the NFL. But I'm gonna tell you, I think he will retire sooner than you would think.
I think so too. I think so too. How old is Kirby? Let's see. I want to say he's maybe in his 50s now. Well, it can't be. I think because he was playing at Georgia in the late 90s, so it can't be more.
He's probably mid 40s, I would imagine. He looks like he's about 45.
Yeah, Kirby Smart is 48. So, but I mean, I'm with you. I think he probably has that drive to become the greatest of all time because he's at an age where he can. He's got so much time ahead of him, but it's like
and he's just built just like Saban.
He is 100%. But Saban never, aside from Alabama, Saban never stayed at one place for too long until he got to Alabama. Kirby, I mean, he's been the head coach at Georgia, and that's the only place he's been head coach. I mean, I just wonder if one day he starts to get an inkling that he wants to try something else out. Who knows? Who really knows? But this Georgia Bulldogs team, what do you think going into 2024? Better or worse than the past couple Georgia Bulldog teams?
You lose the stars, like the Brock Bowers, the Lad McCocken, and then, of course, you lose, progressively, not just last year, but progressively the last 2 or 3 years, you've lost all those studs on defense. But you're kind of like, I'm telling you, they're the new Bama. I mean, I'll say it as an Alabama fan. They're replacing 5 stars with 5 stars. I mean, Georgia's good. I think they're going to be starting. You got one of the best quarterbacks. I think one of the best prospects in the NFL draft with Carson Beck. You got some transfers. What's his name? Boy from Vanderbilt. I think it's a stud. Landon Humphreys, I believe is his name.
I think that
London Humphreys.
This is going to be a interesting year for Georgia because for so long Georgia's played in that really weak SEC East. The only teams who have really ever given them any sort of battles within the regular season are the few times that they would play, a big SEC West opponent like an LSU.
If Florida ever had a good season, if Kentucky was having a good season. And
the only real opponents in the SEC East were Florida and Kentucky every now and then maybe Tennessee as they got better. But Tennessee, crapped the bed every single time they played Georgia. In the Josh Heupel era. But this year, this schedule is a gauntlet. I mean, this is one of the tougher schedules in the SEC. It's going to be Georgia's toughest schedule in a long, long time. It's definitely a very tough road schedule, and we're going to get into it here in a little bit. But I think regarding this team, I agree with you. I think Carson Beck is probably the best or the second best quarterback overall in this quarterback class in the country. I do think that he's kind of the best quarterback that we've had in quite a while. Like, is that safe to say? I mean, he's a good quarterback, but I mean, if we compare him with the best quarterback of each year going back 10 years, I think he'd probably be in the bottom.
That's the thing I like the most. He don't turn the ball over. That's what I like about him the most.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's just solid. He's solid all around. He can pass it. He's a great game manager. But he can throw it down the field as well.
And he has game. He is dating one of the
Cavender twins.
Yes, he apparently has game. I was not familiar with his game.
He really helped himself out when he shaved his head.
He went with a little shady look.
Yeah, because that dude, man, I mean, look, he's not the most attractive dude. Obviously, he can pull a Cavender twin. But, man, that dude was getting drug all over Twitter, when he first came up last year about how ugly he was. But hey, if he gets that NFL bag, he's already got the NIL bag. He's got NIL deals with like a jet company.
He just turned from a 4 to at least an 8.
That's a big jump. That's a big jump.
That's a jump. I mean, he's not at all level or
So,
level, but
my concerns with Georgia this year, I do think that they're going to be really good on offense. Even after losing Brock Bowers, look, that's not a guy you can replace. He's a once-in-a-generation type tight end, right? I mean, best tight end we've had in college football in a long, long time. Ladd McConkey is another big producer that you can probably replace, but not quite as much. His hands were just so good. He was so reliable. But you've still got some guys on the outside that can make some plays. You got some good running backs.
You added Trevor Etienne
you bring Trevor Etienne from Florida. So my concern, I think the defense, which has been so stout the past, really the entire time Kirby's been there, but especially the past, 3, 4, 5 years, I think you're going to see a slight step back this season on the defense. Travaris Robinson becomes, I think, co-DC. I did not think that was that great of a move. Alabama fans really wanted to keep him, after Nick Saban retired, ends up going to, actually, I think he may have left before Saban retired, if I remember correct. But
I thought it was so funny how they thought they was getting Caleb Downs.
They thought they were getting him. Like
I didn't want to lose Caleb Downs, but I didn't want him to go to Georgia.
I was relieved when he entered the transfer portal. I obviously wanted him to come back to Alabama, but I was relieved when he went to Ohio State because at least he wasn't going to Georgia, and because they were 100% thinking they were getting that kid.
Oh, 100%.
But I think that T-Rob is a good coach. Don't think that he was as great of a hire as Georgia fans probably think. I think they only think that because Alabama really liked him, but he was a position coach. So, but I do think that we're going to see a slight step back on defense, but I still think they're going to be great defensively. I just think that we're going to see Georgia kind of go the route that Alabama did a little while, because Alabama was so great on defense for many years. Then you started to see a shift when Saban hired Lane Kiffin and then Sark. They became more of an offensive team with still a really good defense. But let's get into the schedule here. Surprise, surprise, folks. I mean, all right, end the video right here. That's it.
A little spoiler for our next episode where we're predicting who's going to win the Clemson Georgia. A little spoiler, but
and a spoiler for our Alabama preview.
I definitely think that they're gonna do good. I think this is by far their toughest schedule they've ever faced in the last couple of years, by far. But no, I believe it. Is it me or is it weird to see Auburn playing Georgia in early October?
I feel like that's when they usually play them, isn't it? Well, no, I think last year they played them earlier, but I do think traditionally they play them a little bit later in the season. Because I always remember
I thought it was Georgia, Cupcake, and then Alabama.
Yeah, I always remember the Kick Six season in 2013. Ricardo Lewis's catch was only like 2 weeks before the Kick Six, so I do think that that's usually how it was. But yeah, I mean, just looking there, I mean, from September 28th to November 16th, I mean, that's a grind. I mean, you got a break in there with Mississippi State, but let's not sleep on Auburn. Florida's always, not really tough, but
you got to go to Oxford. I mean, it's going to be tough.
You've got really tough road games in Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss, and I believe Tennessee this year.
Georgia Tech ain't going to be no walk.
No, hey, who knows? Yeah, Brent Key might have them boys going.
Oh, yeah, man. Run the ball.
Run the dang ball. Now, I'm going to be realistic here. I've been saying for a while, I do actually think that Georgia loses a regular season game this year. I 100% believe that. They've just gone so long going undefeated in the regular season and then lose to Alabama in the SEC championship.
If you had to pick a game, what game would it be?
That's my thing. Is it's like I can't sit here and definitively tell you that I'm really confident in Georgia losing any of these games. If I had to pick one, not to be biased here, I think it's Alabama.
See, mine is
or Ole Miss.
Texas.
Texas, I can see Texas as well. I just want to see a little bit more from Texas, see how they reload after this season. But, I mean, the three big ones, of course, are Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss, and then maybe Tennessee. But I think you're going to see, like, you remember in 2012, Alabama had won the national championship in 2009, 2011, and they were dominant. That's when the dynasty really started. They were rolling through the 2012 season, and then in comes this guy who people had been chirping about every now and then, named Johnny Manziel, and Texas A&M pulls this huge upset. I just feel like we're going to have something like that with Georgia this year, whether it be like a Auburn or a Tennessee, who knows? I just feel I'm just getting this inkling. I could be totally wrong. Hell, I probably am, but that's just what I get. This is just this feeling.
The comments are going to let you know when you're wrong.
Oh yeah, they're gonna bark at me. They're gonna tell me, "Hey, I'm a stupid Alabama fan. What do I know?" You know, it is what it is. But Georgia fans need to remember that y'all are living through the greatest era of your entire program's history. You know, we've been living this. You know,
I don't know about that. I think when Mark Richt was the coach was the greatest time ever.
Mark Richt, okay. I'll go with who was the coach of the '90s? What's that guy's name? He always wore the vintage hats like this. I forgot his name. But guys, I think that kind of does it. Any closing thoughts for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2024?
National championship or bust.
Has to
no
be.
Finals, national championship or bust.
Do we think that Georgia is starting to go the route of like national championship or bust? I mean,
there ain't no starting. They've been on that.
They've been that way, obviously. But I mean, let's say Kirby Smart retires. Is it going to be the same as Alabama's expectations for Kalen DeBoer, for the person that replaces Kirby Smart?
Yes.
I just don't think so. I don't think Georgia has the same historical outlook that Alabama has.
But they view themselves as like an Alabama.
You are 100% right on that. Georgia fans, you can come in here in the comments all day long. I want you to remember, you live through a great time right now. You are the kings of college football right now, and I want you to enjoy it. You had one national championship prior to this, and that was in the 80s with Herschel Walker. Okay, you are not a blue blood. You aren't anywhere close to it. You got a huge fan base, a great fan base. But come on, let's tone it back here. You're not an Alabama. You're not a USC or a Michigan or an Ohio State or a Texas or Oklahoma. You're in like the B or C tier as far as like historical relevance. Okay.
Ooh, okay. Hot take.
I don't think that's that hot of a take. In fact, it'd probably be a D tier if not for how good they've been recently.
Ooh.
I'm just saying.
Love that.
They will love that. So, all right, guys, I think that does it for our Georgia preview in 2024. Hit them with the John Rivers.
You stay classy.
Stay classy.